Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Mom Your Own Way. I'm Lily Coco, and today my guest is Brenda Batista. We're starting off the day a little rough. We were trying to figure things out. I spilled some coffee. There's thunder that you might hear in the background. So a lot of things are going on, which I'm thinking, hey, it's got to be a really good show then. We're going to talk about motherhood, toddlerhood. We're going to talk a lot about speech development because she's a speech therapist. Oh my gosh, I can't even talk. Brenda, I'm going to need your help. So let's just jump right into it. Hi, Brenda. Brenda, you look beautiful.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Ew.
Thank you.
It.
We did make it. It took us a second, but here we
Your
are.
little ones.
It's so funny because we go through this experience of like making sure things are set up, and then when we're live, people are just hopping in, so they're like, what's with hot mess? You guys okay? We're just making it.
Yeah, exactly.
Brenda, I'm so excited to talk to you. We are social media friends.
Yeah.
Right,
Awesome.
odd. It's kind of odd, but we became friends on TikTok, and I love seeing your videos. I love your advice, the tips that you do. I want to know everything about you, so I'd love to start with your journey as an individual. If you want to talk about your childhood, I absolutely love that because I think everything through our life really does build us who we are. I'd love to talk about the tips and get to your profession now, and then your relationship with your kids, your parent, whatever we want to talk about, but I'm so ready to get started. I want to know about you, Brenda. You tell me about you.
Okay, my name is Brenda. I have 4 children. I always bring that up first because that's who I am right now. I am
Yeah.
mom. 4 girls. I have 4 girls. I'm a stay-at-home mom, with this nap hustle, which they don't even
Yeah.
nap anymore because they're already older. But I homeschool my girls, and yeah, I'm just wanting to help parents, sharing tips that I have found that have worked along the way. I am not practicing right now as far as inside of a therapy clinic, because I'm really just focusing on my kids right now. And I left my actual job when I got pregnant with my fourth. It was just too much. So here I am on Instagram in the corner of the internet, my corner of the internet, trying to make a difference, one
And,
video at a time.
and the way you're kind of saying it, I hope you know, because it almost seems like a negative thing, like, oh, I had to walk away from my job because I'm doing this. But the thing is, what you're doing, when you're at your office job, let's say, you can reach, let's say, 30 clients, right? Big amount of clients. You're helping 30 people. But being able to be online and reach hundreds, thousands, up to millions, you're helping a lot of people. And the fact that you have 4 kids, I mean, that just speaks to your credibility of how you made things work. And in general, I think parents can connect to another parent because we all know the steps that it takes to get through a day, get through newborn, toddlerhood, kids, there's certain things that we share where it's like, hey, you know what? It's all right if things feel a little hot messy sometimes, because I think they kind of should, right? It's silly because I think within parenting world, there are so many, of course, opinions. And I think it's so important to hear everyone's a different opinion because that's how we get to learn. I think the previous generations didn't have that, right?
Yeah.
So they couldn't share the tips or the tricks that would help somebody. Along the way, there was also a very much different style of parenting, right? And so I think a lot of us, self-included, I'm not sure about your upbringing and stuff, but I grew up with a very different parenthood than what I am practicing. And I have a lot of friends who are my age who grew up with the parents who are now saying like, hey, well, I raised my kids this way and they turned out fine. And we're all like, I'm currently in therapy because I'm finding out that what happened to me wasn't okay and wasn't the right way to communicate to a human being. But again, you can't blame them for it, right? Because they didn't have the access to the things we do now. And so I think the social media it still is seen almost like, oh, what, influencers dancing sometimes, right? But like essentially it's your outlet, your window to reach many people and really help them, which I think is so beautiful,
Yeah.
especially with toddlers and speech, because I think communication is, I mean, that's just like the most important thing in any relationship, right? With your spouse, with your kids, with your family. And from my opinion, I think a lot of like the tantrums or frustrations really do develop from miscommunication. And that
Right.
could come from miscommunication of control, a miscommunication of a need, or a word miscommunication, which I see often happening. You know, you see those videos where like, hey, it's a bad example, but like, hey, kid wanted a red cup, but then they cried when I brought him the red cup. Like, but that's what they said. And it's like, oh, well, maybe they said just the last thing you repeated and they
Mm-hmm.
didn't mean it. And so
Right.
being able to provide our kids with a toolbox of different ways to communicate or how to learn it, I think is so important. Um, and you're doing that. That's so cool. All
Yeah, definitely.
right.
Late talkers are at risk, double risk of having more severe, more frequent tantrums because they don't know how to communicate, right? Or they
Right.
feel misunderstood, you know?
Right.
So my mission is to kind of teach parents how to deal with that, how to go about it.
Yeah.
Um, I go through a hard time with my toddler, my 2-year-old. She has frequent tantrums. She's not a late talker, but it's been a process learning how her little brain works, and how you were saying how we're parenting different, a lot of us, than how we were parented before,
Right.
with our own parents. And so typically, a child like my daughter who has many tantrums, who has a very difficult time communicating, um, would have been spanked or screamed at or use a
Right.
behavioral chart or, X
Right.
mark because of that. And like, we're not getting to the core, like,
Right.
why is she having a tantrum? Like, how
Right.
can I help her meet her needs? Like,
Right.
what can I do um, to help her communicate, what her need is? And
Right.
it's been a process with her, and now is when I'm starting to see, like, I'm reaping the benefits of all the years of patience with her and helping her communicate, because you know using this technique is not the shortcut. The shortcut would be to just spank and put a little X mark and on a behavioral chart
Right.
and move on, and we need to get to the core of why they're acting out, like, is
Right.
it because, how you said, do they need a little more attention? Like, sometimes I feel with my daughter, it might be that because there's 4 of them and she's the
Oh,
third.
sure.
So does she feel like she's getting lost between the two?
Mm.
Do she need more of me, more one-on-one time? Or in other cases, like how you were saying, children who just lack the words to be able to communicate,
Right.
say, this is, I want that cup or I want this cup. And it's not because they're not saying red because it was the last word that you used, that we're teaching them not only the words, but gestures, because not always is a child going to be able to use
Right.
words. We want to teach them how to use gestures and communicate however they're capable. You know what I mean?
Right.
And of course, pushing them to um, whatever their potential is, helping them get
Yeah.
there. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, there's so much into that because I think something I'm trying to heal from and learn is that that process of shaming and labeling that often happened, I think, in the older parenting, and still does, especially in the authoritarian kind of parenting, where people are, if you didn't do something right, or if you, bad examples like, hey, you spilled something, now you're in a timeout. And to
Right.
me, because that often happened to me. And so when I try new things, if it doesn't work out right, I get so down on myself and I blame myself because I'm like, well, I shouldn't be doing it. This should be taken away from me. I'm a bad kid. I'm a bad person because I didn't do it right. But instead, we should be promoting a like, oh, you want to pour? Let me set you up a table outside and we'll practice it 400 times because they love doing it. But also,
Yeah.
there's so much to it, right? And then with my daughter, we always walk through the steps of, all right, I'm tilting this over. You see how it's filling up to the top. Once it's at the top, I'm tilting it back down to stop the pour. right?
Right.
Walking through the
Exactly.
every step where she's now, okay, mommy, I'm pouring, and stopping. Because I think if we don't narrate things, they're just observing like an alien, right? It's like, how did that water magically come out of that thing? And how did you make it stop? Like, at what, how? Because I'm pouring and it's not stopping. Like, how is it doing, right? And
Right.
something we did with my daughter early on, it was such a silly like joke. I gave her a banana and I called it an apple because I was just like trying to figure too many things. I said the wrong thing. And she giggled. She said, Mommy, banana. I said, oh my gosh, Paisley, I brought you a banana, but I called it an apple by mistake. I didn't mean to say apple. I was supposed to say banana. And she loved that story. We kept retelling it. But now when she says the wrong thing, she says, Mommy, I said blue baby, but I meant to say pink baby. But because they slip up too, they say the wrong thing because we do it as adults. We
Yes,
can just
yes,
express ourselves and say, oh, that's not what I meant. Sorry. But showing that example to her, she's like, oh, I can explain myself when I meant the wrong thing. And just that little step of when I explained it, I think that opened up so many things for me where I'm like, I need to explain every single thing that happens. And when I do, like, even with motor skills, she's picking it up. She says, oh, now that I know how to do it, I can ask the right questions. I can use those words in a different situation, you know, like something I've talked about before is when I moved countries. I moved from Russia to US when I was 12 and I really struggled with communication. I would try to say things and people said, oh, you're so dumb. You don't know that word, but I just didn't know the translation of it, right?
right.
Plus, there's a double step of like, okay, you think about it, then you translate it, and then you express it. And then maybe the sentence structure is off. Maybe the feminine masculine form is off, right? Past tense, present tense. There's so much that goes into building a sentence. And then I would get made fun of. I got bullied for so many more other things, but like for communication. And feeling like I couldn't communicate and that was taken away from me. I think what connects me to the toddler and doing the show, being able to give kids a way to really express themselves so they're not seen as stupid and they can express their needs, right?
Right, definitely, definitely. That is a common misconception where if I suggest, okay, I suggest an evaluation for a child, or I suggest, for the parent to really get to know how they can support their child in their language development, they automatically think I'm calling the child stupid, and I'm
Yeah.
like, no, absolutely not. You and I need help for certain things, that sometimes
Right.
we need help for, how many times in my business am I not able to do something myself and I have to reach out to help,
Right.
it doesn't matter. Like if they need help, they just need a help for probably a short period of their life,
Right.
but that doesn't, what comes out does not reflect what's up here. You know what I
Right.
mean? It
Right.
doesn't reflect that. And so, sorry, I lost you for a second.
No, go ahead, go ahead. If there's a way to mute the notification ding, that way it's not recording it. But if you need
Yeah,
it
I've
open
been
for
trying to do
kids,
that.
go
No,
ahead.
I've been trying to do that, and it's on silent. I don't know why it's not.
Today is just such a show. I'm honestly just taking it all in because it's just what we're up to. But something I did want to mention was the I think sign language can come into play a lot here because when they can't think of the word or can't say it or
Right.
pronounce it well, they can use help like sign and a sign language. One of the first sign language we did with my daughter was help and just asking for help whenever
Yes.
you needed.
Yes.
And so instead of ever like shouting or trying to get my attention for it, she just knows to ask for help, and then I can immediately swoop in. And that was as her as like a baby. And then you try to start taking your steps back, right? It's like, hey, you can do this on your own. But in case you need my help, I'm right here. Let me know. But it alleviates a lot of that thing with the signs. But something I tell my friends is that if you don't even have to learn sign language, if you develop with your kid that like this means drink, like whatever sign you have with your kid or a
Right.
sound that you can communicate, that's going to help you in your relationship.
Right.
I saw a video on TikTok of this mom and she was crying. It was so sad. She said she was watching a camera from the daycare and she saw her little boy do their sign for water. But then the daycare worker didn't know what it was, so he didn't receive water, and the mom was just crying. She's like, all my kid wants is water, but nobody knows our secret sign. And so there is a default to that like other people might not know if you create signs, but it will help you in your house.
Right, right, of course. And there are certain like signs that are more important than others, like even on just a family basis. Like if, for example, something I always talk about is my daughter who has had extreme eczema. Like there was certain signs that we taught her for itchy or uncomfortable or this or that. And there's definitely some signs that are more important than others that you can really focus on just to like decrease the tantrums, you know what I mean?
Right.
So like, for example, help or more, those are the really important ones, rather than like, I'm not saying bird is wrong at all, but like,
Right.
really on the ones that will help communication, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, for example, more help, etc.
Right. You know what? That's exactly where I am. I struggle because I do the toddler show where it's helping to, help kids learn to talk, and we're getting such great reviews. I'm so thankful to be doing this work. And but something I struggle with. Thank you. We're doing like 1 million views a week right now, and like parents are reaching out. I had a family with triplets who reached out. All of their triplets are just like, like just striving, and I'm so happy about that. But something I think about sometimes is like, I hate teaching zebra when you're not really going to come across a zebra anytime soon in your home or in your park, but I love teaching cup, please, open, diaper, wall, like literally things that you are actually going to come in contact with. They are familiar to you, that you can recognize, because then it's putting it in your toolbox to say, oh, like silly Miss Lily did pouring. She said pouring. I know now this is pouring, right? Because they can connect it with things that they're doing. Plus, that allows them to actually practice. They don't have a zebra in their backyard. They're not going to be just saying zebra all the time. But I understand it. Learning sounds, all the books we have, it's all farm animals. It's all this. So you want to relate it in that area. But I'm always striving to like mention things like jumping, because when we're at home, it's not like we're randomly going to say, I'm jumping. This is, well, we do, because I just started narrating everything, but narrating every motion, slipped, fall, almost, care, like it allows the child to pick up the in-betweens that we as adults already know. But for them, when they're not named, they wouldn't have a way of knowing where to find it.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always tell parents, there's nothing wrong with kind of like teaching, like, for example, you were saying zebra and all those things. It's fine, but you definitely want to, like, for example, whenever I'm using a word that might not be as important, I mean, shoe is pretty important, but let me just give you that example because it's in the top of my head. Like, you want to also emphasize a word that's really important, like in, on, off. You know what I mean? So you could do like shoe on, shoe off. You know what I mean? Like you pair it with an important word. Shoe is an important word, but you know what I mean? Like when you're talking about whatever.
Right.
But those are what we call functional words, words that will really help a child get their wants and needs met.
Right. Right. And communication, I think it also meets the parents' need, because when we're asking our kids, hey, will you put that back in? Right? They need to know what in is in different situations. So putting your foot in a shoe, put your shirt in the basket, right? We name it a few times. Then they're like, oh, when I'm placing an object into another area, that is called in. All right, let's keep, like those are the words we can take into different situation and really help it through. But like you said, shoe is an important word. And something I wanted to come back to that you mentioned, getting your kid evaluated, to making sure you know where they stand so you can get them the help, not the help that they need, but help put them on the right track so they're getting the right help. Because if they are way above, right, they don't necessarily need you to spend time going over what more is, right? They're going to need a little help maybe on something specific. Maybe it's something regarding a very specific topic, but it's that knowledge of knowing how to align ourselves. And I think it's important not only for kids but also for adults, right? I think we sometimes need to like evaluate where we are and say, hey, I don't know anything about laundry. I really need to learn about laundry. That's not the best example, but like figuring out, hey, maybe I can learn a little more about that, whatever the subject might be. Speech also. People are still learning languages. I think we often, like as adults, we're still learning, like every single day. But we're like, oh, I'm not going to school. I'm not going to like whatever, so I'm not learning. But these interactions we have, we meet new people, we have revelations.
Definitely. Definitely. We're learning every day. Even me now, I speak Spanish. I speak both languages. But I've been really emphasizing just now as an adult because I see how important it is to be bilingual, especially living in Miami where, we have a ton of people who speak Spanish,
Right.
And so I'm always just reading and trying to expand my vocabulary even as an
Sure.
adult,
Sure.
in the Spanish language because it's important,
It is so important. And
and
I
we're
think there's
always
more to learn in the fact of like, yes, a different translation for words in a language. Like we know Russian, so we're also trying to introduce that. But I think it's the idea of that, oh, one word could mean different things to different people and you name it different things, right? So it's the bigger aspect of like, people might literally be talking about the same thing, but call it something different.
right,
And
right.
just knowing this idea that one thing could be very different, something opens up this whole opportunity that we as individuals do things differently, kids do things differently, like there's a difference in each of us, which is so beautiful and amazing. But something I do struggle with is that when the one word has two meanings, right? So it's like nail, nail, and then you first introduce it and the kid's like,
But
this is nail, right? And we were talking earlier. My daughter's starting to read, and so she knows all the big letters, right? So those are all on the puzzles. Everywhere you see them, they're easy to recognize. And she likes to do notes. She types on my little notepad on my phone, but it's little letters. And so she was looking over on the left side where the Q is, and said, "Mommy, there's a backwards P." I said, "What?" And the Q looks literally like a backwards P. And I was like, oh my gosh, honey. Then I had to go through the whole thing of like little letters, big letters. And then I thought, isn't it so silly? Because in most reading, it's actually all mostly little letters. It's just like the beginning of the sentence that's big.
yeah,
The rest of them are all going to be small. Yet we teach one thing, right?
yeah,
If you're teaching them all along, that's beautiful. But it's like then we're teaching them another thing, kind of like, hey, I said it was this thing, but it's actually also this thing.
right,
And
right.
so I was like, oh man, I feel like I'm doing it backwards because if she knows the little letters, she could probably put more words together now because we're doing this activity where you pull a letter and then I'm writing, cat, C-A-T. So she's matching C-A-T. Now she's pulling the letters, forming them into the word, being able to go and do it sound, but they're in big letters. So we're putting all big letters together. She's learning how to essentially not write, but like type it out with her hand,
Yeah.
big letters. And then I have to tell her that I kind of been lying to you. There are these other letters that are actually doing it.
Yeah.
But I just think it's silly that there's so many, like we said, a word has two meanings and letters are different. It's hard to learn. Man, I'm still learning.
Going back to the bilingual thing, so a lot of people think that bilingualism causes language delays, right? Because it's you're confusing a child
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. I can see that.
using two different words. So that there's a ton of research that says that that's not true. And if you think about it, how many words do we have in English? For example, big, huge, tiny,
Right.
small, that have like similar meanings but different words. It's kind of the same thing in bilingualism, like agua and water. It's two different, words, same meaning. It's kind of the same thing. But I get that a lot. That people think that, teaching your child two different languages will cause them to be delayed, or if they are delayed, that their pediatrician a lot of times says, oh, stick to one language because that's probably why they're delayed, because you're teaching them two different language. But Kids are so smart. They're
Oh my
so
God.
smart. Like,
Oh my
we don't
gosh.
give them enough credit. You know
Right,
what I
right,
mean?
right, right, right.
Their
I
brains
agree.
are just absorbing everything, you know?
Yeah. Girl, I'm gonna tell you, like, we've been very lucky. My daughter is so like speech advanced to a point where I'm like, the only thing that's really hindering her is her height almost, right? Like she wants to do things, she can name him. Now she walks through the process of like, I'm cutting, putting tomatoes in, mommy. I'm going to mix. Like she's narrating every single thing. And those are like physical activities, right? But like she's also now able to go into the emotional level and let me know, hey, mommy, this part is scary. I'm going to close my eyes and go over here. And you're like, if she just ran away but didn't tell me, like, what happened? What's going on? But her being able to express those needs and let me know. And we've been going over like emotions and support. And in my emotions video, I'll go over affirmations and encouragements. Like, I'm strong, I am brave, I can do hard things. My daughter just went to the playground. These big kids were playing everywhere. She started climbing all by herself for the first time to the big slide. And she said, I can do hard things. I can do brave things. She said, Paisley's focused. Paisley's careful, and kept climbing. A kid jumped down on her and didn't phase her, and she kept going. And I'm like, that's going on in your head right now as a 2-year-old, right? What else is going on there that she just doesn't have the ability to express? This is how much she can express.
Yeah.
Which is amazing for me to be able to look into her world and say, oh my gosh, there's so much that's going on in that beautiful brain, right? They're learning every single thing, to learn that materials are different, that like a curtain is a fabric that waves versus a stone, right? And then they see things like, if something falls, does everything fall? Does a house then fall? If this shelf can fall, like, where does it stop? Where's the separation of things that can and cannot occur? I struggle that with animals because I'm like, this is a cow, and now we're doing this is a dinosaur, and I'm like, you won't see dinosaurs walking around like you will see cows. Dinosaurs aren't just on farms, right? So being able to explain that, like, we talk about so many things, and some things are plausible, you might come across, you might not. There's so much to learn. Sometimes when I think about it, I'm like, what world do we live in? Right?
There is, and it's so important for us to not limit them. You know what I mean? Like how you were saying, how you teach your child all these strong, brave. That is gonna make her who she is. Like she's going to the playground and she's being strong and she's being brave. You're feeding her mind these things, these positive thoughts. You know what I mean? And just not saying, "Oh, my daughter won't understand what brave is," because how old is she?
She's 2, and she just turned 2 months ago. My baby.
Yeah. And anybody would be like, "Oh, they don't understand that," and they tend to water things down. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm like, no, like this was something that happened to us almost a year ago. My daughter is also 2. She's about to turn 3. 2 weeks or something. I was at a friend's house, and I had just given birth to my 4th Audrey, and I was nursing her, and my third one is the one that I was talking about before, or the tantrum one. She's a ball of fire, okay? Like a ball of fire. She somehow managed to like climb on the couch, and she did, I don't know what, fell, and instantly started crying. And I was like, okay, that cry's not normal. Like as a mom, there's something off.
Right.
And then we picked her up. We were like looking at her, and everybody was like, she's fine. But she kind of kept crying and kept crying. So I took her to a corner where there was nobody. It was just me and her. She had just turned 2. So she's talking, but she's not. She's not like a 3 or 4-year-old where she's talking. Right. And from just turned 2 to like 3, there is a huge expansion in vocabulary that year. So a 2-year-old and a 2-year and 1-month-old and a 2-year and 11-month-old, there's a huge difference in vocabulary.
It's essentially like a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, right? You're on those spectrum. Right.
So that's why people are like, why do you count in months? I'm like, because months make a big difference when they're little. Yeah. So then I took her to the corner, and she's like, mommy, it hurts right here. and she pointed to her like her neck area.
Yeah.
And it was like, and she was kind of moving her arm and she was moving her neck. So I'm like, I don't know. And she kept telling me throughout the night, it hurts right here. And she would start crying and crying and crying. We ended up taking her to the hospital because she was persistent. It hurts right here. It hurts right here. Because I teach her words like hurts and boo-boo and ouch, because those are important words.
So important. So important.
She ended up fracturing her clavicle bone. And
baby.
she needed to be like in a what do you call it, like a split for several days, which didn't last several days. It didn't last several days because that girl was like, yeah, I'm not wearing this. And the doctor was like, oh, that's normal. They're not gonna. Yeah. But yeah, the point is, and when we got to the hospital, we didn't know what was going on. And the doctor was asking questions and this and that. And she looked at the doctor. She said, it hurts right here. And she was like,
good for her. Like, good for her. Yeah, you say your needs.
Yeah, and the doctor was like, okay, let's just do an x-ray in that area, because she was moving her arm, which was the weird thing, you know?
Right, so it's still mobile. Right.
Yeah, and so he did it, and sure enough, she had her clavicle right in half. And the doctor was blown away at her ability to, like, say what was going on, you know? And that just goes to show how important it is. Imagine, like, I always tell people who say, children grow at their own pace, or they develop at their own pace. That is true. That is true. No two children are the same. But we don't want to abuse that sentence. You know what I mean? Because sometimes I get 3-year-olds or 2-year-olds who are not talking, or maybe have a handful of words, and they're like, oh, children go at their own pace. Yeah, they do, but that doesn't mean that some of them might need support.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you're struggling, really, really, really struggling to lose weight, like really struggling, would you just say everyone loses weight at their own pace, or would you like hire? Right. You know, that doesn't mean that someone doesn't. I always use this like analogy of like someone who starts a new job. You start a new job and you're struggling to do your job. You know, you don't know how to use their systems, their computers, and this and that. So the people around you see that you're struggling. Some people say, you know what, let's train this employee. Let's give them some support so they can do their job effectively. While others say, oh, it's okay, just let them learn.
They'll figure it out. Right.
They're going to figure it out. But if we did that, then you would hate coming to work. Because you would be frustrated. You wouldn't know how to do your job effectively. And even if you eventually learned, how long did it take you to learn? And how long, how like, would you still be able to reach your full potential if it took you so long to learn the basics, while someone else who got support? Doesn't mean they're dumb, or it doesn't mean that they're not going to amount to anything in their career. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that they need a little bit of support, and that's it. You know? And so, yeah, like sometimes, like if a 2 or 3-year-old is struggling, it's okay to give support. Like communication is such a vital skill for you, for me, for everybody. And if we don't set them up like humans, like our success is based on our communication skills. You know what I mean? Like to be able to talk and express ourselves and our needs and this as adults. So if we're not giving children the base foundation that they need to be able to communicate and succeed in life, I mean, you know?
It's hard. I think communication's hard for so many adults, right? People with large vocabulary, even who, let's say, I've gone to like large, pristine colleges, might still even struggle expressing their emotion, right? So even at, let's say, at the highest, who you would consider high IQ, might still struggle with something like that. Some people still struggle communicating in general, just knowing the right words to use or put them in the right way, right? Maybe it wasn't shown to them. Maybe they haven't seen it before. Maybe they missed out somewhere. Maybe they had moved, but struggling in general, not only in expressing their emotions, but just like physical needs. And that's adults. With kids, like they just showed up to this party, right? They don't know anybody. All they want to do is stand close to the person they know, which is mom or dad. Because they're like, what is that? What is that? Why is that doing that? Even water running, like if you're an alien on a planet and water's just running, you're like, where is it coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Why does it make me wet? Why is it doing that? Why is people placing me in this thing where I don't know when it's gonna stop? Is it gonna fill up? Like, they're so new, and not being able to express and say, oh my gosh, my back itches. Oh my gosh, all this stuff I just drank is messing with my tummy. It feels full and gassy. It hurts, and I can't express it.
Right.
And then we're introducing them to
Yeah.
new foods, which is like so amazing, so fun, so delicious. But when I eat broccoli and too much of it, I pay for it for the next 3 days. Like my stomach hurts like it's gonna erupt. And I'm just like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, way too much broccoli. Even too much of a good thing is a bad thing.
Right.
I love broccoli so much, man. I eat it like in bowls, and then I really do. But like, and then as a baby, like even a teeny tiny bit of something new, whoa, right? New to
Yeah.
the system. And then I've also been learning about the research that they're doing on all the artificial dyes and like the red dye that's causing like tantrums, explosions. There was the kid who was suicidal at 7
Yeah.
for being exposed to artificial dye blue and artificial red 40. And so I hate that like as parents we think we're giving them something that's good, right? New food, new things to try, yet some of them could be hurting them when we don't know it. My daughter was sick. We gave her some medicine. She was allergic to it. So I'm like, oh, I think I'm making her feel better. She was allergic to it. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the worst thing. That's the last thing any parent wants to do is in any way hurt their kid, right? We want what's best for them. We want them to be better than us, right? To have more opportunities. I don't want my daughter spending 30 days trying to learn why she is good enough and why I should be able to stand up for myself and not have the negative self-talk. Like, my goal is that my daughter never speaks to herself the way I spent the last 30 years talking to myself, right? I want to provide her with all the needs so she doesn't have to spend half of my third of my life really unlearning that certain things shouldn't have been done. I shouldn't have accepted certain things, and I should have had a stronger voice to advocate for myself.
Right. Definitely.
We all need that, even in situations that are like conflicting at, I don't know, a Starbucks, like something happens, to be able to express yourself. Like if somebody's crazy is just yelling at you, that would be traumatizing. And to be able to be equipped and say, hey, okay, why did that happen? Am I in danger? Does this happen all the time? Like if a kid just witnesses some sort of an interaction like that, I would have so many questions, right? It's like, do adults just yell? And then that's the whole thing with the parenting or the shaming. I think we teach our kids to accept the love that we provide them with. So if it's like yelling is your thing and really hollering and maybe beating, I think it teaches our kids, oh, that is acceptable. That is an acceptable behavior I can accept from a loved one.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. Even growing up, my parents are phenomenal people. But they're learning. They were learning. They didn't know, and they did certain things that I want to do differently. Again,
Right.
they're amazing. My parents are amazing, but there are certain things that once I had my own kids, I was like, it doesn't have to be this way, like it doesn't have to, and like I do things very differently from the people around me, and I get questioned a lot, especially with my daughter who has her tantrums. She's gotten so much better, so much better. But it's been a process, and
Right.
during that process, um, I was questioned, and I'm still questioned a lot. I was questioned a lot, and people who are, why don't you just do this or why don't you do that? And I'm like, okay, explain to me why I should do that. No, because you're the parent. Okay, but that's not a good enough answer,
Right.
because
Right.
like I need to know why. How is that teaching her a real skill? And it's just like really realizing that it doesn't have to be certain ways. You know,
Right.
it's okay to
Right.
lean on your mom intuition and your mom gut to parent the
Right.
way that you want to parent. And make decisions the way you want to make decisions.
Right. And I think there's so much. in that, I think that's originally why I wanted to start the podcast of Mom Your Own Way, because I saw so much mom shaming in general and judgment that I saw online in my videos, in my friends' videos. And it's hard because, especially in TikTok, when things go viral so fast, the mob mentality is out of control, right? Like, it just gets slammed. And then we all understand it's like, hey, 7 seconds. One of my friends posted a video. It really didn't land on the right side of TikTok. And you saw it in the comments. And then I reached out like, hey, you okay? Everything's all right. She's like, and you know the person, right? So this is kind of, you know the person. You know that's not any representation of them at all. And then you see this bullying that's done by parents. And you're like, man, why are we bullying each other as parents? That's not okay. But it made me think a little bit deeper about it. And I'm thinking, okay, when these events happen, it's almost like a trigger, right? Which is a bruise. I mean, something's poking at something that's hurt us before. And when it comes to parenting, we're all kind of entered in this place because a lot of us aren't taking the example of how we were parented. Therefore, we're starting something new and learning along the way. So we're making choices and decisions that we think are going to benefit our family the best, but we aren't sure of it. And so we almost have to like buckle down and defend that, hey, what I'm doing is right, and I'm going to stand behind it. And if you're questioning saying the other thing is right, then you're saying my thing is wrong, and that's not right. But when the other person's saying it, it works for their family and their circumstances, right? There's different people in a family unit. They do different jobs. They're away at different times. Their kitchens look different. They might not have a backyard. So it's like if you're talking about a backyard, it doesn't apply to them, right? And so I think because we're all just trying to figure this out still, right? We're all in this new parenting thing. And on one sense, there are so many resources out there to really find things that work for you. But at the same time, it's so overwhelming, the amount of information that is shoved out there. And it's exhausting. And I think it's a huge mental load for especially default parents, because you're sitting down and you're analyzing this information, right? You're going to try this. Maybe you're going to try that. Now you have to explain it to your partner, maybe. Maybe you have to explain it to the grandparents, right? We're becoming teachers of things that we think will work for our family, and then they might not work, right? Then we're like, ooh, didn't mean to do that for my family. Let me try a different thing, right? And so it's like, we're still living. We haven't stopped living as a person or an individual. We're still living and learning, but now we're also trying to provide tips and tools and new way of learning things for this new other person and a family unit. Like, that's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm. It is.
And something I wanted to mention, you gave birth and your other child fractured her clavicle. That must have been so much pressure and anxiety for you. And I'm sorry that it happened to happen so like bombarded at you. That's difficult. That's a lot for you to take on with, man.
Yeah. It tends to be a tradition, unfortunately. When I gave birth to my second, my first broke her arm.
Oh, man.
And yeah, she was, those little playhouses?
Yeah.
I was nursing her, and I literally look up, and I see that she's climbing out the window, the little window. She gets her foot stuck, but we had that little playhouse inside the house.
Okay.
We're in Miami. It was really hot. So, and I had just given birth. I'm like, I don't want to sit outside in the heat. So we brought it inside the house so she could play, and I could just keep an eye on her. And she was actually playing with a friend. So she kind of tripped between the friend and a part of the house, and she landed right on her arm and broke her arm. And I'm like, geez. And then the next child breaks her clavicle right after. I'm like, what is this? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Being a mom is hard. It's exhausting, but so worth it.
It is. And I hate seeing those things where I see like moms and parents, and I've even done it, but having to defend the job in any way, whether saying that like, hey, it is exhausting. Yes, it is a mental load. Yes, it is physically challenging. Yes, it is hard if you're balancing work and home, or if you're just doing things at home. Like, it's so funny because I got on this Reddit thread about a nanny job, and she's in San Francisco, and she was going on about if she was getting paid fairly. She was watching 3 kids doing regular home duties from around 8 to 4, which include lunch making and picking up from school. Everybody agreed she was getting underpaid and that she should be charging $300,000 a year for that job. Everyone agreed upon it because within the nanny standards, that is what's applicable in that part of San Francisco for those qualifications. And I started screaming in my head because I said, moms don't get paid $300,000 for not only doing it 8 to 4, but continuing on till about 8 or 9, right? Without weekends, holidays, there's no payment. But we are saving our family money, right? We're not asking another person to take care of our kids. We're doing it for them. So I want to do this thing. I'm like, to all moms out there, you're essentially saving your family $300,000. Like, and what we're doing isn't minimal. Like, we're raising a human being who's going to do amazing, incredible things, and it's an honor to provide them with these skills and abilities to communicate with someone else, to really like find something they love. But it's because it's everyday stuff, it is often overseen. Plus, we're grown up to like, hey, if you're successful, you're making a lot of money. But at home, you're not really making quite money unless you start doing side hustles or other jobs. And within workplace, there's promotions, there's recognition, there's this. So it feels like we're doing something, especially if we're brought up in the other ways where it's like, if you get good grades, you're good enough. And if not, you're just the worst person. And so we're bringing that into our adulthood saying, oh, my worth is based on my productivity. My worth is based on my accomplishment or recognition. And because we're not receiving that as a home parent, it seems and feels like we're lacking and our self-esteem goes down. We don't know what we're doing. We're making decisions at this point based on people on the internet, right? And so it's just so overwhelming and emotionally challenging for a kid to be born into this whole new area, space, and planet, essentially. And for a mom or dad, there are dads who are staying at home, but I would say for a default parent to figure out, okay, me and this kid, we're going to figure this out. What are we doing here? What am I doing? What's going on, right? And feeling worthy of it and feeling proud of the job that you're doing. And, I think we should give competence to our kids, making them feel like they can do things. And I think we should provide that for ourselves, that like, I can do things. What I'm doing is important. I deserve to have a clean house. I deserve to have a nice clean kitchen that I'm going to wipe down and love looking, But I think it's so important that we're giving those things to our kids, because when we can't communicate those things, even to our partner, it's so hard, right? You can stay mad for your partner, or your parent for like weeks. Oh, another thing I want to mention, I love my mom. She raised me and my brothers as a single mom for quite some time. But there's a lot of things that I will not be doing. And I think that makes it so hard because there's almost this excuse, right? It's like, oh, well, because she's family, of course it's fine. But if I say, because, I grew up not loving the belt. I don't think I was necessarily hit, but I saw my brothers get hit with the belt. And it was appropriate, and it was in Russia. Like, it's still going on, and it's the thing to do. And parents only, like, it's as normal as breathing. Like, oh, if your kids act out, that's just what you do, and it's passed down through generations. Right. The only thing people know, right? Yeah. And so there's no way she could have even known that wasn't the right thing to do, essentially, right? Yeah. Especially being pressured and told by others that's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. But it's hard because then it's like, I wouldn't approve of it necessarily in others because it's not what I see. But then for my mom, I'm like, oh, I understand it. But that makes me think I understand it in other people's ways too, because when you don't know, I have a friend who started spanking. When she started out, she was spanking her kids and kind of hitting them within her culture. It was appropriate, but then learned not to and found that there was another way.
Right.
But I have that understanding, and to know that, oh my gosh, that's so hard to like wrap your mind around.
Yeah. Especially when it's instilled in you, like when you were exposed to it, it's like such a hard habit to break,
because that's all you know. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're trying to learn these strategies that you were never taught,
Right.
So
right.
That's where I'm thankful for social media. I think that's one benefit, because I don't sit there and take all the advice I see. I let my discernment as a mom decide
I love that.
what is for me and what's not for me. I'll be honest, there's some things for gentle parenting that I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to work in the house. My boundaries need to be a little more firmer. I guess that's not even a word.
But how
But
important that you know that and you can set that example for your kids, right?
right.
Go on, sorry.
No, it's just that like it's kind of deciding what is for you and what's not for you. And like for example, I also had a video that landed on the wrong side. I forgot if it
Mm,
was on Instagram or TikTok. I think it was on TikTok. Yeah, where I was talking about the strategy of not saying no. I
okay.
don't mean in like where my daughter says, "Hey, I want to go to the park right now." Right? It's not, I don't mean saying, oh, you have to say yes all the time. I'm saying, like, just kind of try not using the word no.
Right,
Like,
right, right, right.
for example, we will go to the park tomorrow, or we will go to the park on Friday. Today we're doing this, right? Where you kind of turn your words into a less negative, you
Right.
know? Because children hear no so many times a day
Mm-hmm.
because they want to do things that are not appropriate. And of course, I'm not saying say yes to everything, but just try to put your words in a way that are a little less cut dry. No, we're not
Right.
doing this. No, we're not. No, no, no. You have to do it like this. You just
Right.
kind of play with their toddlers, you know.
The kids, yeah.
You have to be gentle. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember growing up and always hearing no,
Right.
and which was okay. Like my parents weren't saying no to things that were not, that were it was appropriate to say no.
Right.
But I wish it was given maybe like a choice. No, we're not going to the park, or saying we're not going to the park today. Would you like to watercolor or would you like to play with Play-Doh? You know
Right.
what I mean? Like where
Right.
you're kind of like working around it, still setting boundaries, but not so where I just remember feeling so like brushed off and so shut down, and everything was no, no, no. And even as a teenager, I remember thinking, I can't wait till I'm on my own so I can do all
Right.
these things. And I'm not saying those thoughts will never happen, because I think it's like a normal thing for teenagers to go through, but
Sure.
um being a little more positive about it.
Right.
If, like for example, I think that one of the examples that I used was like candy, where my daughter asks us for candy. We're not having candy right now, but would you like grapes or bananas? Like where
Yeah.
you're redirecting, not automatically shutting them down. you know I feel like that makes a huge difference on how they react. You know what
We're
I mean?
big fans of that here, and we've been very lucky, I think, because of the speech development and all of the stuff. But my daughter's only had like maybe 5 tantrums, right? Like it's
Yeah,
very easy going with her. We're very lucky, very blessed.
yeah.
Like I just love her. She's so sweet. And again, I might hit it happens at different stakes. I'm not saying anything, but
Every child is so different with that. 'Cause my first two,
exactly.
I was like, "What's a tantrum?" And then
Right.
when I made my third one, I was like, "Oh, that."
Right, right, right. But I think something that does help is being able to express herself and tell me if she meant the right thing, wrong thing. But we very rarely say no in a way of, if she wants to jump, we can't jump on the couch. We can't jump down here. Let me set you up a little cushion and you can make your own little obstacle course.
Right,
Mommy, I
right,
want to paint. We can't paint right now because it's cold outside. I don't want your hand getting wet. I don't want you to get sick. We can color in the bathtub. We can do some stickers right now. We can bake right now so you can still get your hands in there if you want to play with some water. We can put some
right,
cups out in the sink. Give, because I try to think of it on my level. Like on their level, it's something simple, right? Oh, they want to
right,
go and paint, but we just can't. So it's like, it's just painting. But what if you had to, let's say, go to the park for them, right? If you had to ask someone for permission to take you somewhere you really wanted to go, essentially needed to go, because so much learning is
right,
done through any activity, right?
right.
Painting, drawing, jumping, there's so much that's going on constantly. So any activity they do all day long is a learning opportunity. So if you
Mm-hmm.
had to ask someone for permission to take you to the boot camp, to your job essentially, and they were saying no, you're just like, but I feel like I have to do this, and it's the thing, plus it's fun. So it's like, oh, can I go out with my girls? Will you take me out for a girls' night? And then they say no. You're like, why not? This was a fun thing, and we did it yesterday. Plus, they don't know time. So it's like, we did it yesterday, but now we can't. Why? It's like, there's different days. What days? They don't go to work. They don't experience traffic. They're either in the car or they aren't, right? It's moving or there isn't. We don't know what time is, right?
Right.
This kind of felt like 20 minutes. It's been an hour, but it's fun. So it's like, it's engaging, it's going. Sometimes a night feels like an hour. You're just having so much fun. And sometimes a minute feels like an hour because you're like, man, I really don't want to be doing this right now. Get me out of here, right? But we have the time concept that we can see that we can read. Kids can't. So on top of that, and being misunderstood, it would just be so hard to be a toddler. Like, they're just trying, right? They're trying.
Yeah, and like I said, you're still setting boundaries. You're still potentially the boss. You know, because people say, "Oh, kids shouldn't be telling you what to do." They're not. I'm still setting boundaries, and my boundaries are very firm. But I'm trying to be gentle within the boundaries. You know what I mean? But yeah, those are things that have helped me with my daughter, who, when she hears the word no, she spirals. And so I've learned to like kind of, I'm still saying no, just in a different way. You know what I mean? And when she does go, just a quick tip, what things that have worked for me is when she does have these tantrums, she talks. She has full on sentences. But sometimes toddlers still have difficulty getting those words out, even though they have the words. You know what I mean? Maybe it's something they don't know exactly how to use them or where to use them. So, for example, the other day I cut her banana. She didn't want it cut. And I always cut them, but that day she didn't want them cut. And as soon as she saw them on her plate like that, she about had it. And so in that instance, I say, "Mommy, I don't want my banana cut." Like I teach her those words.
Right.
Mommy, she knows those words, but you still got to teach them how to use them. In every situation. She knows how to say, but you're still teaching her, "Oh, okay, this is what I do," instead of throw myself on the floor. So I'll tell her, "Mommy, I don't want my banana cut." And then I'm like, "Okay, let's not cut the banana. Would you like to get up so you can get your whole banana?" So she's yes. So I help her stand up, and I say, "Okay, let's go get your whole banana." And then I repeat again, "Mommy, I don't want my banana cut." And then I give her the banana whole, how she wanted another one, because you choose your battles. Right. And then the following time we had lunch, she says, "Don't cut my banana, Mommy." I'm like, "Okay, I'm not gonna cut your banana." And then it's just teaching them when and how to use these words, and just a lot of patience, a lot of patience.
But for me, it helps to put myself in that situation. If you don't know how to say it, because in certain situations I've panicked before, and then you kind of freeze, you forget a word, you don't know, you're surprised by it. And something I struggle with, it's like we think the next day is going to be the same, right? It's like, oh, tomorrow it's the same thing. But often it's something new happens, right? And now they want to try the banana this new way. Maybe they've been thinking about it all morning because they've seen you chew it big. They're like, I want to try that, right? Because they get in that area where like, I want to do it myself. So she's been thinking about it all morning. Okay, she's going to bring me that banana. I'm going to try to bite it like Mommy. But you don't know that. She hasn't said it, but then you bring it to her. And so she's like, that's not what I wanted. I was so excited to try this other way, but now I can't, and I can't say it, and I'm panicking, right? So there's so much... from a positive thing, like she was just probably excited to copy you and copy your mannerisms and learn to do it on herself, maybe try, whatever it is. But I can picture myself in a situation like that if I don't explain something to someone, if I spend all week inside and then finally randomly decide, oh, I'm going to spend all day outside, but my husband didn't know that, right? Maybe he planned a trip and now I'm like, I was going to do this. He said, I have this planned. Why did this happen? It's like, oh, we just couldn't communicate at that time because, right? So like, I think as adults, we often do it as well. We have a different thing of thinking where I think what we often think what we're doing is so important, what they are doing isn't. But if they're sitting there trying to figure out that shoe and how to pinch all three fingers together, put the little part in the thing, like there's a process, there's a 1, 2, 3, then you pull, but not too hard, put it through. Like it takes so much patience and so much work, but it's because it's so easy for us. I think it's easy to fall onto like, hey, either I'm going to do it, you should know how to do it. But it's so important to take the time to express, hey, if we're ever in this situation again, you can say, hey, I need a moment. You can say, I'm going to walk away. You can say, maybe we can do something different. You can say, let's try, provide them with things that they can say. That's back to the thing like no or can. What can they say? How would it be helpful? I try to use helpful every time. Hey, it would be helpful for mommy if you could do it this way next time so I know. And then now it's, I want to be helpful. How can I do it? It's communicating, modeling things that they can say in those situations. Because how would you know?
Yeah, definitely. But
How would you
definitely throughout this entire journey, the most important thing to realize is that we're not aiming as parents for perfection. It's not about perfection. Like I say no, I use the word no with my daughter every once in a while. I'm like, I shouldn't have said it like this. I said it like this, but that's okay. Like we're not perfect. We're just
Right.
we're just learning to be better.
That's the thing. We're
And
learning with our kids.
of
Right.
course, and being better just means okay, like using the right strategy a little more. Like say rephrasing questions, like how we talked about not using the word no a little more than what the times that you say no. It's
Right.
not that I never use no, and it's not even that there are days that I do not respond to my daughter correctly, because I have had it and I
Right.
snap. That doesn't make me a bad mom.
No.
We're not perfect. We're not perfect. And I always tell my friends and just my followers, it's just aiming to be a little better. You
Right.
don't have to aim for perfection, because if you aim for perfection, you're going to feel like a failure. Because
Right.
in the beginning, when I first started learning all these new parenting skills that I thought, I was like, you know what, this sits well in my heart, and I
Yeah.
want to apply these strategies at home. It was hard to change my words or
Right.
change my habits, and I found myself doing a lot of things that I didn't want to do, and to this day I still use strategies that I don't want to use. Like I still sometimes, if you don't do this, then this is gonna happen, like, or
Sure.
I'm too harsh or whatever. I use words that are not uplifting,
Sure.
especially with my 7-year-old. um and I don't want to be that way, of course I don't, and then I feel like crap afterwards, and I have to remind myself, I'm like, I'm not perfect, I'm just trying to be better. That's it,
But
you
it's
know
also a great example for your kids to see that you're human.
mm-hmm.
How do you react afterwards in that situation? Because those things are going to happen to them, right? They're going to feel
Right.
overwhelmed when they're throwing this thing. That's exactly how they're feeling too. So if they see you coming in, hey, if you feel like you want to apologize after and say, hey, maybe I shouldn't have acted that way, they will learn, hey, when I act that way, when I didn't want to, I can go to mommy and say, I didn't want to act that way, mommy. I'm sorry it happened. I felt overwhelmed. Because they've heard you set that example, right? They've seen what happens. And you can use that. It's such a great learning opportunity. I don't think there's things to feel bad for, because they should see us as humans, and we can explain things to them. Because when it comes to those events, right? Those things are
Mm-hmm.
going to see in real life, but it's safer for them to see it at home. Then it be explained, so when it happens, they understand what happened, right? They aren't
Right.
fearful of like, do people just like randomly yell? Should I be worried about it? Do I also yell then, because we're all doing it? But it's more of
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, this occurred because there's so many things going on. What would be helpful right now is if maybe you played, I can finish this thing and then did this other thing, and then we could spend some time together, right?
Yes. Yes.
Because then they can say, oh, and the next time I see mommy overwhelmed, maybe I can, like opening up that communication door through different tactics. And back to the no, I know we talked about it a lot, but it is important to say no for safety reasons, for
Right.
setting boundaries. It's how we say it. That's the only thing that we're like, hey, we can say things in a nice way. You can say, no, you can't have that right now, but what you can have, why don't we take a picture of it? We can go home and draw. We'll draw a t-shirt for the whatever, right? But tell them
Yeah.
what they can do, because it's hard to know what your options are when our kids are so dependent on us, right? To take them somewhere, to even get food, to pour them a drink, like basic needs, even shower, poop, whatever. They need someone's help. And that's detrimental sometimes to someone's self-esteem when you're constantly asking someone else to help you with the simplest thing, right? I think we often feel as a burden because we can't express our needs because we feel like, oh, they won't be able to do, right?
Right.
And I wouldn't want that for kids or the next generation. Like, I want them expressing their needs and saying, hey, I need this right now. What would be helpful for me if this happened? And really opening that up, because I think it'd be so beautiful if, like, right, we're seeing this different change in parenting, and these kids are going to grow up and all interact with each other, and they're going to go on dates and be like, I don't see this working anywhere. Like, just be so emotionally in tune and be able to express their needs and stand up for things like, hey, your behavior isn't appropriate right now, and I won't be taking that on. I hope you have a very good day, and I'm going to just peace on out of here. Instead of saying, like, how can I help you? What did I do wrong? What is this? What is that? The panic that comes over. It's like, we don't need to be fixing other people's feelings or emotions. We're going to need to secure ourselves, do what's right for us, and keep it on. Brenda, I have to get going. I had such a good time talking to you. Where can people find you so they can talk to you, follow your journey, check in with you, follow your tips?
So you can find me on both TikTok and Instagram. You hear me okay with these?
Yeah.
Okay, Instagram and TikTok. It's at tiny.talkers.speech. And the handle's the same on Instagram and on TikTok. And I just started posting on YouTube. My first video will go out on Sunday. I've been posting on Shorts, but my actual video will go on this Sunday. So basically on my pages, I give tips for parents on how to get their child communicating and using more words and gestures and babbling, because all my tips are from birth all the way until they're speaking in full sentences. I have a lot of free resources. I have a free masterclass where they can learn strategies that they can apply at home, and a milestone checklist where you can kind of see where your child should be at from birth all the way until 5 years old on this checklist.
That's amazing. I'd love, when you get a chance, send all of the links over to me. I'd love to include them in the descriptions, anywhere that I can put them in, so then people can definitely find all this stuff and find you and get in touch with you if they need to.
I sent it to your email right before the show, so you'll probably see it after.
Perfect. All right, Brenda, I'll let you go and I'll log off of this as well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the show. Brenda, thank you so much. I'll probably send you a message after this. Thank you. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, the same. Thank you so much for having me. Had so much fun talking to you.
Yay. Bye, girl.
Right. Bye.
All right. Thank you, everybody. That was amazing. I kind of want to see if she'll be on again, because I feel like there's so many more things we could talk about in just the speech therapy and the tips. God, I have amazing guests. I'm just so lucky. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I hope all the best things happen to you. I love you, and I'll see you next time. Hi, Brenda, thank you. Oh, wait, hold on a second. I didn't even end. Let me end this. Bye, guys.
Bye.
That's funny.